So guys, it finally happened. I actually played a Monster Hunter game. What do I mean by actually played, you ask? It means I played more than 75 hours of Monster Hunter Rise in a single week and over 100 in total now, which is most likely more than some of you diehard fans of the series have played in a single week before, considering most of you probably have a job or something. But by now this is probably enough hours for me to form a true opinion on the game. Why would you care though? Well, I'm the Mr. Trails and I've played give or take about 4,000 hours of Dauntless, the free-to-play alternative to Monster Hunter, and it took about 3,000 hours before playing a single minute of Monster Hunter. There's plenty of people who have played a bunch of Monster Hunter then tried Dauntless, but not a ton of the other way around. So now that I've actually played a good amount of Monster Hunter, hunting each of the monsters in Rise at least a few times, what are my takes on them? Which ones do I think are difficult? Which ones do I think are not too bad? Which of the weapons have I played? What do I think about some of the overall mechanical differences between how Dauntless and Monster Hunter work? We're going to discuss these things and more in today's video, so strap yourself in, grab some popcorn, it's probably going to be a long one. Seeing as I've actually played the game for real this time, I'll probably be making some more Monster Hunter content, so subscribe if you want to see some of that, or if you want to keep up with Dauntless stuff. I cover the news about the game all the time. Also, if you could do me a favor, consider sharing this video with other people you know in the Monster Hunter community, because I would really kind of prefer a much more thought out and structured video like this one to be more viewed than my admitted train wreck of a first Monster Hunter video. I've also been playing Monster Hunter over on the Twitch a bit if you prefer more of a hands-on interaction. So let's begin with why I feel like this time was even different at all. Why did I actually stick around and start playing Monster Hunter a lot this time? Come to think of it, this is actually how my Dauntless journey started out as well. On console release of Dauntless, I played for about a week, then quit. When the Aether Strikers came out and Trials came out, I came back for another week and quit again. And it was only once my dad and sister wanted to play the game with me that I finally played until the end game and learned how the game worked, which Dauntless was one of our only options, being that we had an Xbox, PlayStation, and PC player all wanting to be in one lobby together, something a Monster Hunter game still has yet to do. But my experience with Monster Hunter Rise was pretty similar here. I played the game on two separate occasions alone, made a video about them, and then it was only once I decided to play with some of my friends on the game that I finally came around to playing it more. I felt though, since I was a YouTuber for Dauntless, that I should play solo to prove some type of point and not just have all of the comments on the video saying that I was carried the entire time, that Dauntless players are bad at video games because the game is easier than Monster Hunter or whatever. But when I finally just didn't care about that and played the video game, that's when I finally kept playing the video game and made way more progress, first getting carried by my friends and then making a ton of progress on my own solo. Many gaming experiences are better when you've got someone to play with, and I feel this genre is no exception. Now that we've established that much, let's refresh our memory on where I left off on Monster Hunter Rise after our last video about it. I had just finished Magnum Malo in the village quests, which made the credits play for the solo story. But seeing as that was about 2.5 months prior to me picking the game up again this time, I pretty much forgot how to play, so being carried through some of these quests was probably somewhat needed. I had the 5-star village quests and 2-star hub quests available to me. I was playing the Aknosam longsword and didn't really have a true build going yet, just some random armor pieces slapped together. And for the record, I started playing again during a subathon over on my Twitch, so that's what the timer above the chat box is. The subathon does end during this gameplay, so there will be some stream footage at the beginning and the rest will be offline gameplay. Similarly, there will be some very painful longsword gameplay at the beginning of the video, and more towards the end you'll start seeing some maybe decent longsword gameplay and some bad gameplay of other weapons. First up, I wanted to refamiliarize myself with how the game played a bit, so I queued up for a 1-star Great Wroggi in the hub. Great Wroggi was something I surely wouldn't die to, but something that would probably knock me on my ass a few times. But that's kind of one of the first issues I have here with Monster Hunter. The low-ranked, easy monsters like this are intentionally designed to not really knock you on your ass, especially once you have good enough defense rating. This is in contrast to Dauntless, where, whatever level you are, Lesser Embermane is going to knock you on your ass if you give him the chance. It's not necessarily bad, but it's not necessarily good to not get knocked on your ass, as this probably would contribute to teaching a little bit of bad habits in the early game. The amount of damage I think was appropriate. Basically not taking any damage in a low rank quest is fine, but the knockbacks and stuns should still be there as if it were like a high rank in my opinion. It's just kind of weird to have my teammates be knocking me back and not have the monster knock me back for the majority of its attacks. One of my viewers, Pleb Wizard, decided to stream snipe me while I was playing, so I decided I would just invite him to a party so he can carry me anyway. I tried to remember some more controls and then we fought Pukey Pukey, which was pretty much the same deal. It actually looks like I only took took damage once in this entire fight. And after that, we fought Rathian. These are all things that we covered in previous Rise videos. By the way, if there's anything ever wrong with my camera, it's a channel point redemption on Twitch, this one being wide mode. And after Rathian, we had the urgent quest for Magna Malo, effectively making me sweat bricks as this was only my 4th hunt back. But with multiple people to watch your back and pull aggro away, especially someone at 300 HR, it obviously wasn't too bad though. So we did it again right after. And these Magna Malos were the first monsters we decided to capture instead of kill. After this, we got Revirad, a fellow content creator, in the mix as well. I queued us up for a Tobi Kadachi quest where I would get my first glimpse of Narga Kuga. And we'll go ahead and just play a little bit of the previously mentioned hunts gameplay here to comment on a pretty major difference in one of the core mechanics between Monster Hunter and Dauntless, the dodge. Monster Hunter has two main types of dodges that you get on most of the weapons. You get the dodge roll and you get the Superman dive. The dodge roll in Monster Hunter actually does have a comparable amount of invincibility frames to Dauntless. However, in Dauntless you really only have to line up a couple of these frames to successfully dodge an attack, and you'd be invincible until the attack ends or another hitbox of the attack comes in contact with you. In Monster Hunter though, attacks can have a large number of frames needed to dodge them, which can make some of them near frame perfect inputs. So I can see from this why people coming from Monster Hunter might complain that Dauntless has too many iframes. However, the Superman dive kind of chucks that entire conversation out of the window in my opinion. It literally gives you multiple seconds of iframes and literally doesn't end until you get up from the dive. I would say it is balanced though, because you aren't able to attack the monster in this time, and if the monster has proper timing, it will be able to basically get a free hit on you. After being told how generally few iframes you are given to dodge attacks, it makes sense as to why I would struggle when it comes to the dodge roll. But from my point of view, having access to the Superman dive is much more overpowered than just regular dodges in Dauntless. Similar to the Elder Dragons, the Dauntless escalation bosses have moves that can more or less one-shot you if you don't dodge it properly. There's a grab style move where your teammates can have the opportunity to save you if they interrupt it, and there's the shockwave type move. In Monster Hunter, you can Superman dive to comfortably avoid these attacks, but only the chain blades in Dauntless would be remotely capable of matching this level of safety on those type of attacks, and they don't even do that good of a job. But the power of the Superman dive goes to say, if you're willing to sacrifice a tiny bit of time on your hunts doing Superman dives all the time, avoiding all damage isn't completely out of the realm of possibility. But then you could also argue that the amount of damage you deal in Dauntless relative to the behemoths is more overpowered than that. More about that in a while though, let's talk a bit more about our hunting timeline. Next up was Diablos, which I don't believe we actually faced in our previous Monster Hunter experiences. It's apparent that both Dauntless and Monster Hunter like to use similar base skeletons when making some of the fighting experiences. In Dauntless, Torgdoro and Savit, for example, share a skeleton, which is made obvious from having the same death animation. While it may not be immediately obvious on the surface, it would seem that Diablos and Basarios, as well as Barioth and Nargacuga, for example, all seem to share some type of similar base skeleton, but they do make sure these fights have their own mechanics to them and aren't all just reskins. Not a knock on either game in any way, it's just a bit of an observation, but it would go to say that once you've learned enough about fighting Basarios, for example, that you'd have a bit of an easier time with Diablos. Basarios we already had some experiences with, so I didn't find Diablos too bad. Though at this point I was still pretty horrendous at leveling up my special meter, partially because I wasn't special sheathing enough. During this hunt I also got my first look at Almudron. Then we took on my first Gauss Harad. What's not to love about a Yeti with ice swords for hands? Again, it's basically Arzuros and Lagombi with a different skin and different abilities, but I would hope I really wouldn't have to explain these ones. And then we had Tigrex. Kinda curious as to why Tigrex specifically gets a damage dealing roar. Does it have vocal cords that are capable of making a pressure wave that's as strong as an explosive or something? Anyway, I was getting carried well enough that I hadn't died yet, and our next target was Mizutsune, the monster I failed to slay in the demo, partially because I had to walk away from the computer for like 20 minutes. But I don't die this time thanks to my friends. Then my friend Kat joined in for the hunting, and now we had a full squad. We then actually fight Almudron for the first time. And while I play some footage about these last few hunts, let's talk about another compare and contrast between Monster Hunter and Dauntless. In both games, the monsters and behemoths will get additional HP and stats depending on the number of players in the hunt. The idea behind this is to make the hunt take about the same amount of time regardless of the number of players, so long as they are all similar level to the monster. And the games are actually very similar in this regard. Staggering and stunning monsters take longer for each person added, as well as breaking parts. The one thing I felt was maybe different, just based on how my experience felt, was in Rise they were dealing a tad bit extra damage as well, but a Google search says that they actually don't, and if so, that would make it the same as Dauntless basically. Obviously the main difference then would be by how much did their stats increase. In Dauntless the scaling is set so squads finish a little bit faster, with about 45% to 75% additional HP added to the behemoths depending on the game mode. The regular casual game modes for Dauntless, Hunting Grounds, and Escalations will be 45% health scaling, which Monster Hunter Rise specifically added scaling per player. Previously it was just solo or multiplayer HP. With 2 players, the scaling looks to be exactly 40% bonus of solo HP. With 3 players, the 3rd player adds an additional 46% of the solo HP, and the 4th player of a party will add an additional 34% of the solo HP. This is an average of 40% scaling, which makes the 4-player monsters have exactly plus 120% of solo HP, compared to the Dauntless scaling of plus 135% solo HP. This is for low rank, so I'm not sure about high rank because the Reddit post I got this info from didn't say anything about a difference between the 2 game modes. I would assume the additional scaling is the same per player, but the monsters of course just have more HP in general. I wouldn't be surprised if the emergency quests had slightly higher scaling numbers though, to make things a bit harder, just like how harder game modes in Dauntless have higher scaling. But with some more comparison out of the way, let's go over some more of the hunting. At this point it was time for us to do the urgent quest that would get us into high rank hunting, being a Rampage quest for Apex Arzoros. This was my first time back in Rampage, but I would end up spending a lot more time in here later. It definitely pained me to see this bad stronghold gameplay, such as not leaving my ballistas during counter signals, which make your weapon stupid overpowered. Finishing this quest got us into high rank, where we would basically repeat the same monsters that we've done so far for a while. We did lose Revi, but he would get filled in for in a bit. After a food break, we went for a couple high rank Great Boggies, and then we did Great Azuchi, then Aknosam, and then the Flying Schlong. High rank Kezu here was the first time I fainted in the day, and being 4 hours in at this point, I'd say that's honestly not too bad. And then it was time for high rank Tetranodon, which led us into the urgent quest for Giratotus. And at this point, our friend Layla joined in to fill out the squad. I fought Giratotus in the little time I played Monster Hunter World, and again, with the squad carrying me, it was fine. I'd say it's a bit of an easier monster anyway. This unlocks 5-star high rank, where we would go to actually fight the Nargacuga now. Nargacuga being one of the more important monsters in the game to kill for most weapons. And of course, for this first one, I missed one of the carves, fantastic. Which, a quick note of compare and contrast, in Dauntless you don't need to worry about picking up drops or carving monsters anymore. You automatically get the parts you break and automatically get slay drops, which in another comparison, Dauntless doesn't really have RNG involved in part breaks. If you break the tail, you get the tail piece every time, and it's not just a % chance basis like when you're carving for it in Monster Hunter. There are rare and epic drops which are a % chance thing, but I'd say it's generally faster to get these in Dauntless than to get some of the specific 1 to 7% drops from Monster Hunter. In Monster Hunter, some of the regular breaks might be 80% or so, but others may only be 15%, overruled by carapace or scales or plates or something. I guess you can't really outright say one of these systems is better than the other, but I personally would prefer the one where if I'm looking for a tail, I only have to cut the tail off to get it, because that just makes way more sense in even a practical real-life scenario. But partially due to the differences in these part-breaking systems, we had to keep killing Nargacuga for a bit in order for me to get its longsword. After I got it, we went back to General Hub questing, first fighting a Rathian. After that, we went for some Volvidons, picking up our friend Melon in the process. Then Bessarios, then Royal Ludroth, then we had the 6-star urgent quest for Mizutsune, which again hated it in the original Rise demo, but by the time I got to it in progression, we were fine. If you couldn't tell, now I'm just kind of rattling off what we killed before hitting the urgent quests. After Mizutsune, we did Nargacuga, Tobi Kadachi, Nargacuga again for more upgrade materials, then Somnicanth. And after that, it was time for bed, and I ended up playing more Monster Hunter until the end of the subathon the next day. We'd have our friends Layla, Wizard, and Antar with us to start off. And we started off with a big one. one, the urgent quest for Stronghold Ibushi. It was pretty easy, but I noticed that I didn't sharpen the entire time, on account of, still, this was only my second day back. After that, we had 2 more 6-star quests remaining until the next urgent quest, so we took on Rathalos and Zinogre. On the Zinogre fight, Wizard got sneak blasted by a Rajang. I'm sorry, Wizard, but I had to put that in here. It was kind of funny. After those, it was time for the urgent quest for Rakna Kadaki. It's a big fire spider, kind of interesting fight. I wouldn't say it's really hard, but I do have a pet peeve on this fight on how often the critical spots change. Speaking of, here's another comparison point. In Dauntless, it doesn't matter where you hit the behemoth, all of your attacks will deal the same amount of core damage to the behemoth, unless they specifically have armor. Certain weapons will gain additional part damage against certain groups of parts, but never get additional core damage. In Monster Hunter, there are weak points depending on what monster it is that will not only take additional damage, but with the use of the weakness exploit perk, you can get a lot of builds to get a guaranteed crit against these parts, making weak spots important for high DPS. And on Rakna Kadaki, sometimes it'll be just the head, sometimes it'll be all of the legs. It just kind of depends on what mood it's in. In this first fight with it, we had a mounting battle of me versus Layla, and I guess I was the winner, getting to use my mounted Punisher first, but finishing this unlocked 7-star quests, where the most difficult base hub quests are. We fought Gosarag, I burned my mini pizza, then fought a Rajang, it killed me with a vomit blast, and I made another pizza. This one was only mildly burned, but I still ate it because I didn't want to gift subs, because I said if I burned the second one that I would gift subs, and it was still edible, alright? It wasn't like massively burned, it was just like slightly singed, if you want to say. We had Cat join, and then we did high rank Magnamalo, Almudron, and Tigrex. These 7-star quests are when I really started dying a bit frequently, even with the help from my friends, due to many of these attacks 2 or 3-shotting you. I think Tigrex and Rajang in particular are a couple of the ones I ended up struggling with a bit / disliking, as they have a couple of attacks that happen in quick succession, and if you don't avoid the first one, you pretty much just die guaranteed to the second one. Struggles with monsters aside, it was now time for Narwa. My official take on it in the moment was it was a quote Giga Chad boss, even though she's technically the queen in this situation. We did have 2 deaths on this first run, but it was still the first try. And this is where you unlock your hunter rank, and leveling it up is just a matter of continually doing the same quests over and over. And here we were basically just hunting a million Anjanaths for a while to get its gems so I could craft the Anjanath coil, I believe. But once you unlock your hunter rank, you start fighting Elder Dragons at certain milestones. When you hit hunter rank 20, you fight Chameleos. At rank 30, Kushiladora. At rank 40, Teostra. 50 for Allmother Narwa, and 100 for Valstrax. I got to about hunter rank 26 before the subathon ended, so after Chameleos, anything new was done offline. I think I've only fought Kushala twice so far, so I don't have a true opinion on it, but there really weren't any issues when we did fight it. Teostra might have been my highest kill count on me, partially because I think I've hunted it the most times out of any of the Elder Dragons. The Allmother Narwa fight that we did took us a few tries to finish, so probably would say that's the hardest one. But as far as Chameleos and Valstrax go, they are honestly pretty easy. I think I've died to Chameleos maybe twice out of probably like 15 hunts or so, but Valstrax was particularly easy. Perhaps part of that was it took me about 4.5 days total to get to rank 100 and fight Valstrax for the first time. And by the time I had gone down for the first time on a Valstrax fight, I was in full Valstrax armor, and my Palico was also in full Valstrax gear. Now yes, in most of the hunts leading up to that, I did use Dragon Resistance, and I may have forgotten to take Demon Drugs on that run as well, but it was still the first time I died to Valstrax, after making all of the armor, so I really didn't even have a reason to go there anyway. But I don't know, just to me personally, Valstrax was just kinda easy, has pretty telegraphed attacks. It and Chameleos, I dare say, are easier than some of the non-Elder Dragons. And I think that covers all of the Rise base game monsters. I think we hit everybody in the series at least once. And a lot of the focus in this video has been on the monsters, as well as some of the mechanical differences between Monster Hunter Rise and Dauntless, my main game of the past couple of years. But I haven't done much in talking about my personal progression in terms of the rate at which I gained skills as a hunter, and that's because during the first 2 days of this experience, there really wasn't much, because, I was just online the entire time, just continuously hammering away, doing the same things incorrectly. The main bit of progression that happened during the subathon was I eventually learned that Silkbind Sakura Slash was a very easy way to level up the meter, and very occasionally pulling off counters, becoming less occasional the further we moved along. The day after the subathon ended though, a little while into the day, I learned that I would be able to special sheath after doing the round slash to cancel the regular sheath, which basically just allows you to attack much faster. And after that, I traded in the Sakura Slash for the Soaring Kick to get another good damage tool and an actual reason to level down the special meter. I think the main flaw in my longsword gameplay, even now still, is trying to pay too much attention to landing Soaring Kicks when I could have instead gone for a Serene Pose counter. It may take 2 wire bugs to use, but there have been plenty of times where I've gotten impatient and gotten knocked out of the air and had to use a second wire bug for a Soaring Kick anyway. I did swap over to the Spirit Reckoning switch skill for a bit, but with how long the combo finisher animation takes to do, it personally just doesn't suit me as much. I think Spirit Round Slash is perfectly fine, especially after learning the special sheath can cancel the ending animation. I did play exclusively Longsword on Rise until even after Hunter Rank 100, and then decided that maybe I should try some other weapons out. I wanted to try out the bow because it seemed like the best DPS weapon in the game, and Dauntless players can get a little obsessed with DPS. However, to get the mighty bow feather, I would have to go through the arena and grab some specific arena coins from fighting Barioth and Rajang. The issue with this was that the build they give you for the longsword Rajang fight is absolutely horrendous. It's the Resuscitate 3, Bubbly Dance 3, and Free Meal 2. Like, what on earth is that? Since we're roasting a skill summary here, it's a point of comparison for Dauntless that skill summaries are similarly important in both of these games. It kind of seems you rather have a good skill summary than necessarily going for the highest defense rating. At least in anything that isn't an emergency quest for like an Apex behemoth. The Valstrax armor in Rise is a really good full set of armor, which comes with really high physical defenses, and when wearing the full set gives you really good elemental resistance as well once you're below 80% HP. From what I understood from watching some other Monster Hunter content out there is that Monster Hunter World Iceborne kind of went the same way. The further you got into the Elder Dragons, the more absurd the armor pieces got, giving you not only good skills, but also just you got a ton of defenses as well. Anyway, longsword build for Arena Rajang is kind of trash, but this did get me to try out my first other weapon, the Greatsword. A lot of people were telling me to play Greatsword after some of my initial videos because it's very akin to the axe in Dauntless. While I don't outright dislike the axe in Dauntless, I do my fair share of playing with it. It is probably my least favorite weapon, and a good point of the reasoning for that is that it's the lowest DPS weapon by far. At first, I didn't find the Greatsword to be all too bad, at least with a hit and run playstyle. However, once I crafted myself an endgame build for the weapon and actually tried to use it for a while, I've come to the grand conclusion that the Greatsword is probably going to be my least favorite weapon in the game, and I haven't even played all of them yet. Even with Focus 3, it's just so ungodly slow. At least with the axe in Dauntless, you can get generic attack speed boost to make the axe not quite as slow, but the only thing that seems to speed up your Greatsword is the Focus perk, which only speeds up the charging time and not anything else about the animations. A non-charging hit and run playstyle is kinda tolerable to me if I just need to guarantee that I kill the thing, but actually trying to sit there and charge anything just makes me want to explode most of the time because I'll sit there, charge up, and just miss my swings half the time. You know, that's a skill issue, you know. But for the amount of animation time the Greatsword takes, it just ends up getting me smacked a bunch anyway. I was okay with it for what I needed to do in the arena and a little bit outside of that, but, you know, I just don't think I can really use it that much anymore. The real goal in even using it in the first place was to get the mighty bow feather to be able to play bow. I'd say that I do like the bow, but there are some things that I do dislike about it. One thing is being a little bit squishier. I don't think the bow feather has any defensive rating at all, so you're usually dying in 2 hits to 6 or 7 star monsters, whereas it would normally be 3 hits on another weapon. Obviously, being able to take more damage would be preferred when still kind of learning how to properly play the game. But another thing about bow is not really knowing where all my critical points are on a lot of monsters, as that would like triple my DPS or something. But I think I've gotten decent enough with the bow combo to be able to handle the high rank monsters solo. It definitely cures an itch that we Dauntless players have of not really having ranged weapons. And once I started truly disliking Greatsword, I looked for something else, and ChargeBlade drew my attention. It's definitely an interesting concept coming over from Dauntless of having two weapons in one, the ChargeBlade being a sword and shield plus axe playstyle. I haven't really played with it all too much, but it does feel nice to fight with. And the final weapon that I've started playing around with a little bit is the hunting horn. I haven't nailed down exactly how to make the best use of it yet, but I've definitely been liking it so far. So we've gone over a majority of the monsters as well as what I think of the weapons that I have played so far. So what is my overall opinion on the time that I've played this Monster Hunter game? I certainly do have to say that Monster Hunter is definitely a more polished experience than Dauntless. You pretty much can't go 30 minutes in Dauntless without seeing some type of bug or multiple, whereas bugs in Monster Hunter seem to be few and far between. At least as far as my inexperienced eyes are able to see, that is. Monster Hunter certainly does seem to have the advantage in that department, but sometimes bugs are fun, like one-shotting behemoths because you had too much shields. One thing that I would say is mildly disappointing about the Monster Hunter endgame is kind of a lack of productive things to do. Aside from just getting better at fighting the monsters, you basically can finish all the quests, grind out getting all of the gear, grind out all decorations, and then grind yourself to get the perfect talismans for your build. Talisman grinding is kinda horrendous as an endgame activity. 1 in thousands or millions to get exactly what you want. Granted, the Sunbreak expansion of Rise is going to be coming out in a couple of weeks, so hopefully that will provide more things to do productive in the endgame. In contrast, with the Dauntless Reforge system, you get noticeable progression for 70 reforges, the first 10 you do on each weapon, which would take you about 200 hours or so. And you aren't necessarily roped into doing the same 6 and 7 star quests over and over to get your hunter rank up as fast as possible. You're incentivized and practically required to go back to lower levels at the start of each reforge in Dauntless. And as much as people will talk about the lack of total behemoths in Dauntless, it doesn't actually seem that far off from at least a base game of Monster Hunter. The large monsters total 46 among all variations, including the apexes, but not including like lower or village quest changes to the scaling, and not including the heroic versions of Dauntless, but including lesser and dire and elemental variants, which do actually substantially change some fights. There are 64, soon to be 65 behemoth experiences in Dauntless now. If you only wanted to count the elemental variations, this would be 41. And if you took the Apex variants away from Rise, it would be 40. But again, Sunbreak is coming out in a couple of weeks to change that total. I've procrastinated on this video so long that I have played the demo at this point, and will say that the new monster, Astalos, has amazing visual design and a pretty engaging fight. I did also take a peek at Malzeno as well, but I knew there was no chance that I was going to beat it on one of these demo version builds. Like, come on man, I at least need Quick Sheath as a longsword player, you know, I'm a little addicted to the Quick Sheath. But of course, Dauntless and Monster Hunter are very similar experiences, given one was inspired by the other. And as long as you have plenty of time on your hands, I would say Monster Hunter is an overall better experience, at least before reaching the endgame, but I still wouldn't say that Monster Hunter is such a better experience that there's no reason to play Dauntless. If you would like a faster pace to the monster hunting genre, have other people on other consoles that you might want to play with, or just don't have the extra money to spend on video games, then Dauntless is more than suitable. Until Monster Hunter checks that box on having a fully cross-platform experience, then there is going to be a reason for plenty of people to still play Dauntless. Similarly, it being a free game all of the time gives a bit of an advantage in recruiting new players. New players come around to Dauntless all of the time because it's free. Whenever you first decide to play the game, you can pick it up and put it down immediately if you want to, and not have any repercussions about it because you spent money on it. It's unlikely that Capcom would release a game completely for free, but their games do go on sale from time to time, including right now on Steam. I will continue to play Dauntless, but I will also be interested in playing some more Monster Hunter. If there are any particular monster fights that you guys would like to see from some of my first times fighting them, then there's a potential that I would be able to make some more videos on those specific fights. There'd potentially be some room for an All Mother Narwa fail compilation video, as well as my hunts from the Sunbreak quick demo. I'll keep the 1.5 terabytes of Monster Hunter Rise footage on my computer for a little while in case you guys want to see more. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and thank you very much for watching. Probably after Sunbreak comes out and I play through all of it, I will probably want to give Monster Hunter World and Iceborne a similar treatment, as I haven't yet given the game a true chance like this. But yeah, I do want to make more frequent Monster Hunter content, and I will still be making my Dauntless content as well. And if you do want to see more Monster Hunter from me, then be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. I can see who subscribes to the channel from this particular video to see how much interest there is. But thanks again for watching. I have been Trevor, I go by the Mr. Trails, and I will catch you guys next time.